a new book about abortion, and whose dad is pretty well known. Our guest today is Danielle D'Souza Gill, and as you can tell from her name, her dad is Dinesh D'Souza, who is a prominent scholar, filmmaker, author. Recently put out the movie called Trump Card. Danielle, it is a joy to have you with us, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So you've really thrust yourself into, like father, like daughter, apparently, the public arena of thought and debate in America. Your dad has done such great work, but you too, I mean, you've been involved with Turning Point USA, right, as an ambassador. You've done videos for PragerU, and you're an author. This is not your first book. I mean, you're really jumping right into these cultural battles. What is that in the genes in your family, or what? Where does that spirit come from?
Yes, it must be. But no, I think when I was younger, I never thought that I would be necessarily in this arena. I think growing up, I actually always loved reading. I always loved learning. But when I really got to Dartmouth College, which is very radically leftist, I was running a Christian group there. I was very involved in, leading women's Bible courses. And I just saw really the politicizing of these Christian groups and kind of how the left was trying to take over them, how politics was kind of seeping into everything. And my first book was really more about apologetics, about young people finding God in their life. And I felt like there was no way I could really just kind of be a Christian on the sidelines in terms of politics. So that's how I kind of got thrown into this with Trump running in 2016. And then from there, it's just been constant battles with the radical left.
The radical left. And, it is amazing. And, isn't it great to have a president who's not afraid to point that out, name it for what it is, talk about really there's a moral and an intellectual sickness that manifests itself in so many ways in these battles. And we've got a president who calls it out, don't we?
Yes, we do. And I think what's been so great is the fact that he's really unmasked how fake the news is. This, idea of exposing the media, of exposing all of these people who are really working against the American people. It's something that we would have never found out had Hillary Clinton won in 2016. So I'm really grateful for that. And I'm also grateful for the fact that he stands for life and stands for the unborn, unlike so many Republican presidents before him who have acted like they're pro-life, talked about being pro-life, but then don't actually do anything when it comes to the pro-life issue.
And that leads us, of course, into the main topic we want to talk about today is your new book. It's about abortion, and it's called The Choice. Tell us about the book in general and what led you to write it.
Well, I really wanted to write about this book because I think that we are in the midst of not only a political battle, but a spiritual battle. And I think that could not be more clear than in the issue of abortion. I think the debate has just changed so radically since 1973, since Roe v. Wade, when the left said that, this would be safe, legal, and rare. And they would say things like, well, maybe there's potential life in the womb, or maybe we need to give it the benefit of the doubt. But I think with the development of ultrasound, with seeing the child in the womb, hearing the heartbeat, we really know exactly what's happening in the womb. And the reason I wanted to take on their most powerful arguments is because I think there's so rarely a debate or discussion with the other side on the issue. They oftentimes don't want to debate us because they know that it will kind of make them look bad and they will actually lose in those debates. So I wanted to equip people to be able to look at any pro-choice myth and be able to respond and kind of take on their arguments.
Well, that's one of the things I like about this book and the approach that you take. One of the things I've been saying over the years is that we're only pretending to have a debate about abortion in this country. There's certainly a divide, and that's the subtitle of the book, right? The abortion divide in America. It divides us. But are we really debating it? Or are we simply talking past each other where one the people on our side, when we say the word abortion, we're thinking about violence against a baby. And the folks on the other side, when they say the word abortion, all they're thinking about is freedom and constitutional rights and health care. So you're really not having a debate unless and until you're talking about the same thing, and you both know that you're talking about the same thing. So what you do in this book is you're not afraid to urge people to think through this issue, not to rely on, old slogans or the kind of the back and forth that we've been used to for decades, but really, and tell me if I'm wrong here, but you're saying to people, look, let's take a step back and let's take a fresh look at this, and let's really engage our minds in an open and honest way to the facts and exchange, get people thinking about it. A lot of times people don't want to think about it. They want to yell about it. They want to, emote and vent about it. But you're trying to get people to think about it, aren't you?
Yes, and I think for so many, even pro-lifers, they would say, here's my main reason I'm pro-life, or I have one, big reason, or maybe there are a couple things that I'm interested in talking about on this. But what about if you have a friend who asks you about another aspect of the debate? You want to be ready to be able to discuss that with them and be able to say, yeah, I really thought about that as well, and I know exactly what the pro-life response is to that. And I think so often, too, people who are pro-life feel like, well, I don't know if I want to think more about this issue because it makes me sad and it's icky and I don't like it. But I think that if we can use it to help other people and be able to be more equipped in talking about it and thinking about it, then it's definitely worth diving into more, because as you said, there might not be, these massive debates with us and the other side, but I think those conversations do happen between friends and between family members, and in those, more intimate situations that you do want to be ready for, just because otherwise, if they ask you about something, you might not have any idea what to say. And we certainly have winning arguments on every single point, whether it's the science, the legal arguments, the social arguments, all sides of it.
You call abortion the most urgent issue of our times. I say exactly the same thing. Why do you consider it to be so?
Well, I think that we've really lost our way on this issue. Unfortunately, this is really the greatest genocide of our time. There are almost 1 million babies who are killed every day due to abortion. Abortion is one of the leading causes of death in the world. And so we're just really seeing this loss of innocent life, and also the fact that there's clear, race discrimination, there's clear sex selection, all of these things that we claim to be against in our society, in our modern world, and yet this is exactly what's happening in the womb with targeting certain children in the womb. And so I think that we have to address it, because we've gotten to the point where the left is arguing for 9-month abortions, for federal funding for abortion, all of these things. And so I just can't see how the average American could be on board with that. And I think the only way that they could is because the left really prevents our arguments from ever reaching them in the first place. They prevent the facts from ever reaching them at all. And that's really the only way they're able to pull off this very radical scheme.
It is radical, and I want to talk about that because that's a point you bring out in this book, the radicalization of our opponents on abortion. But before we get into that more, I often say those who defend abortion fail to describe it. They're defending it, but you won't hear them describe it. And here's how I think about it. I love your comments on this. If you took all the speeches of whether it's the politicians or those in academia or anywhere else for that matter, any speeches or talks that they give in defense of the legalization of abortion, there are certain words you would not find. And those words include dismemberment, decapitation, arms, legs, bones, skulls, blood, forceps. Those words, however, you will find not only in the discussions of and speeches of pro-life people on this topic, but those are also the kind of words you find in the medical textbooks that describe how abortions are done, and in the court testimony of practicing abortionists when they speak about what they do. So isn't this a profound disconnect? And isn't this an indication of who's really right on this issue, when those who are most vehemently defending it refuse to describe it?
Exactly. They get very uncomfortable having to describe it. It kind of reminds me of when Kathy Tran, this woman who was proposing a bill in Virginia, the radical Virginia governor, Ralph Northam, that whole situation when he talked about the baby being kept comfortable and a discussion ensuing with it outside the womb. But this woman, Kathy Tran, was being questioned, and she just kept trying to pivot whenever she was asked, are you saying this? Are you saying that? Are you talking about the fact that this is what's happening at the 9-month point? She just didn't want to say. And whenever they were asking her, can you describe the health procedure? She'd say, well, it's really unfortunate the doctors can't show up. And it's really sad that they weren't able to make it today. But she wasn't going to go into describing it because she knows that that's going to be a really losing argument for them. And that's why in every pro-life talk I've done so far, I always talk about the abortion procedures, because I think actually a lot of pro-lifers don't get to hear what they actually are, because they are oftentimes even censored on social media. Your post will get removed or taken down if you start, posting anything about the parts. And I'm sure you've experienced the same thing where they don't want the truth to get out. But that's why if we're talking to someone in person, it's like, here are the facts on this issue, and then you can decide what you think of that.
Yeah, we started a webpage called Look at Abortion, and I say to people, look, before you talk to me about your opinions on abortion, go to lookatabortion.org, look at it, and then come back and tell me if you think that this is right or why. Because again, they want to talk in the abstract, right? And abortion is not an abstract issue. I always say it's not about viewpoints, it's about victims. It's not about beliefs, it's about bloodshed. And when we get to that deep, concrete, human level of what is actually happening here, well, a lot of people wake up to it, and that's really what you're urging people to do in this book is look, use your head, use your brain, use your eyes, look at the reality of what's going on here. The other part of the reality you look at, and I'm grateful for you mentioning it in the book. What's one of our projects in our ministry of Priests for Life is the Silent No More campaign, and this is a campaign which gives voice. And you mentioned Jennifer O'Neill, the model and actress that many recall from decades ago. Jennifer is still around, and she is a strong advocate for pro-life because she has experienced personally the pain and regret of abortion. And this is exactly what Silent No More is about, giving a platform to those who can speak from experience that abortion is not a solution to a problem, but rather causes more problems. But this is a whole dimension, isn't it, of engaging the issue in the way that you want people to do, where we say, okay, let's ask the honest question. If you're promoting abortion as healthcare, what health benefits does it have? Or in fact, does it have a negative effect on health?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's important to kind of combine these arguments with also the personal experiences and testimonies of people, like you mentioned, with Silent No More, with women who have, realized kind of the effects of that on their life afterwards. And also, I mentioned you as well as one of these fighters and leaders in this movement for so many years, because I think that it's so important that we realize that, this issue doesn't change overnight. It's years and years of working on it. And I think also I like to look at the man's perspective. Men who have been really left out in terms of losing their child. I think oftentimes men are, we say, oh, we want them to be vulnerable and share their feelings, but what really breaks their heart the most is losing a child. And a lot of them experience PTSD from not feeling like they were able to save their child or help their child. So I like to look at that element, as well as the abortion survivors, people who have survived, trying to abort them, and also looking at abortionists who have realized later that, wow, I had really no idea what I was doing in that situation, or, someone who saw that firsthand as well. And also just the people who are maybe in a situation of rape, or in a situation that is really horrible like that, or even these better off dead arguments they make about people with Down syndrome, people who they want to exterminate, that actually do really live lives that are worth living, that we have to defend. So yes, I love looking at all the personal sides of it as well, because I think it's a great way to show, each of our arguments in addition to that side too. So I think it's the facts and feelings together, and that's kind of how we have that winning argument.
Yes, exactly. Well, for those that are just joining us, we're talking with Danielle D'Souza Gill. She is an author, speaker, and activist, and she has written now her second book called Choice: The Abortion Divide in America. And Danielle, you basically lay out in this book, chapter by chapter, different key arguments in the abortion debate. That's basically the approach you take, right?
Yeah, so you'll be able to go through the table of contents, see a chapter title, and go, I actually want to know the response to that. How would I respond if someone says, I'm personally pro-life, but can't impose my views on another person? Okay, I'll read that one. Or how would I respond to these hard cases arguments? What about life of the mother? Or what about the welfare state? How would we deal with this? And so I really wanted to give the chapter titles those pro-choice myths so that I start in the chapter with the pro-choice side and then kind of go from there, because I think that's kind of how the culture, puts these things on us. That's how the left puts it on us, and then we're always the ones who have to then respond. So I wanted it to be, a way that people could be very equipped for that.
So you're equipping people to engage in this debate, and it really is something that people so need. People in the pro-life movement, they know abortion is wrong, but then they face these questions, and you take these questions one by one, you articulate them very clearly and effectively. It's a great resource to equip our people for something that they really do need every day. I want to talk for a moment about the radicalization of our political opponents on this issue, because Danielle, it seems to me it's one thing for people to say, well, I'm not comfortable with abortion, but I don't want to make it illegal. And as you know, we find many people are the divide that you speak of in the title of this book, The Divide in America, is also a divide within our own hearts and minds, right? The individual that we see for the most part in the American public is conflicted about this. They understand the value of life, but they also understand the value of freedom and choice. And it's like, how do I reconcile all of this? So people are divided within themselves. That we can understand and that we can address, as you do in this book. But on the political left, in the Democrat Party specifically, we have gotten to a point where their position, and you referenced this a little bit earlier, has become so outside the mainstream of America, so extreme, so unbelievably radical. Tell us about that position and how we are to deal with it.
Well, the Democrat position is fairly straightforward. They basically argue that we are talking about a cluster of cells. This is nothing more than that. It's really an appendix. It's a body part. Of course, we know this is factually untrue. And usually when we get into showing them the science behind this and how this is actually a human, it's impossible for two humans to procreate and not create another human. So we're talking about a human. But then they kind of shift their argument to saying it's a human, but it's not a person. And what does that mean? That basically gives them justification to kill this person, torture this person by making it seem like personhood is this special status, as if not all humans are persons, when in reality they are. And they are very fickle when it comes to when this human, quote, becomes a person. They say it's point of birth, but what does point of birth actually mean? There is no poof moment where all of a sudden there was nothing and now there's something. We're talking about the matter of location of this child, and in point of birth, there is actually a long birthing process. So is it when the child is half outside the womb, one toe is outside the womb? How are we dealing with a scheduled C-section? All of these things, for example. And that's why President Trump has even had to defend children outside the womb, because the left, when they start devaluing the child in the womb, they're also devaluing the child outside the womb. And that's why we have to quibble with them on these Born Alive Protection Acts and so on. But what they're really pushing for as far as their platform is 9-month abortions, abortion without a medical reason, and also overturning the Hyde Amendment, which would mean federal funding for abortion, all of us paying for other people's unlimited abortions.
It's unbelievable. There has never been a time when the American public has bought into this extreme ideology. Americans, even those that are pro-choice, they oppose late-term abortion, as you know. They oppose, certainly they oppose after-birth abortion. They oppose the funding of abortion. They say, okay, well, it's one thing if somebody else has the freedom to get an abortion, but don't ask me to pay for it, right? So it's like the Democrat Party, are so absolutely captive to the abortion industry, and it seems to be getting worse. You know, when I started out with Priests for Life, there were a bunch of pro-life Democrats in Congress that we were able to work with. We worked with them. I remember even taking part one time in a press conference at the Democratic National Committee headquarters about a bill that we thought was pretty good because it was helping women to avoid the situations where they might feel they had to have an abortion. But now, I mean, the pro-life Democrats in Congress have practically vanished down to zero. The party gives no support for them. And have you noticed how in this election cycle now, they're not even willing to come out and say that pro-life people are welcome in the Democrat Party?
Yeah, that's because they're not welcome. And I actually really like what you said at a recent event. You said that you've gotten more support from the White House than from the Vatican. And I think that could not be more true because many churches today are sacrificing the pro-life issue for basically saying, I want to be liked by everyone. I'm Christian, I'm cool. I really just, kind of want everyone to be my friend. They want everyone to think Jesus is their friend as if he has no values. And so, unfortunately, I think this is partly because people on our side are not standing up. I think if people on our side did wake up and say, wow, I need to stand strong on this issue, we would absolutely not be losing to them. And unfortunately, many people on our side kind of care more about being liked than being true and being adhering to what is right in the eyes of the Lord. And I think that it'll really be a few kind of these very few voices like yourself who are fearless and say, I don't care what the outcome is in terms of you guys liking me. I am going to stand for the children and for the women and for what is right in the situation. And that's really what I hope people take away from reading my book is, what? I'm going to make a personal choice to stand for life, and I'm going to personally make this one of my issues, and hopefully, really make cultural change in terms of changing people's hearts and minds on this issue, as well as the law. But we need both of those things.
Well, Danielle, you are a wonderful breath of fresh air, wonderful advocate. I want to recommend that everybody gets this book. I was very pleased to endorse it. You sent me an early manuscript, and thank you for doing that. So the book, brothers and sisters, is Choice, the Choice, the Abortion Divide in America. And Danielle, where can people get it?
People can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Audible if you like to listen to books, or ebook if you like to read books. And yes, I couldn't thank you enough for your so kind endorsement of this book. It means so much to me, and just getting to talk with you about this important issue, I really appreciate it.
Well, as you say, and as I say, it is the most urgent issue of our day. It is the defining issue of our day. Just like there was a time when segregation was the defining issue, there was an age when slavery was the defining issue. Now it's abortion. It is great to be together in the fight against this evil, and at a time when we need to reelect the most pro-life president we've ever had, and that's a great fight to be involved in as well. So Danielle D'Souza Gill, thank you very much for writing this book, for being with us today, and for what I'm sure will be many ways of collaborating in the future. God bless you.